We've got 3 others. Nice. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is just hello and welcome. I've been meeting you while you have been logging on today. But what I'd like to ask you, if you could just unmute and just very quickly, one word through a couple of sentences on why you have chosen to attend this course. And who would like to start?
I could go first.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marisela Jimenez. I was voluntold, but I was because I didn't know, honestly. They're like, hey, Mari, you're going to go to this. I was like, okay. Um, with the experience, I think it's just a great opportunity to be able, like, even though I was voluntold, I get super, super excited about PDs. I just think that there's always something to learn. So even though I was voluntold, I am very excited to be here.
Thank you. And Geneva wrote that she's Geneva from ENMU Roswell, and she is here to learn and get motivated. Nice.
Hi, I'm Barbara Robinson, and I'm with Donna Ana Community College, Centers for Education and Career Development. And I'm here to learn, get motivated, and hopefully pass that motivation on.
Nice. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Corina Gonzalez. I'm from Clovis Community College. I'm an advisor in the afternoon, and I'm here because I was also volunteered and told to be here, but I also think there's a lot of more things that we do learn. I was in, I believe, last year in this also this training, and I love it. I learn a lot, and I'm excited to see what other new stuff we can learn today.
Thank you. And Eva's with ENMU Roswell, and to get motivated. Okay.
My name is Beth. I'm from New Mexico Junior College in Hobbs, and I attended a breakout session a week ago in, I don't remember the name of it because I'm new to this adult ed thing, but I was intrigued and I thought this has a lot of good tools that I can use and adapt to my position at NMJC.
Thank you. Welcome, Beth.
Hi, everyone. My name is David Castro. I'm with ENME Roswell as well. And I'm here just, like everyone else, to get motivated, to absorb any knowledge that we can get, and to really maybe adapt the tools to myself and my career going forward.
Thank you. Welcome, David.
Hey, this is Matthew from ENMU Roswell. Of course, here to learn something new, and like everyone else said, get motivated and encourage others to stay motivated.
Thank you. I'm excited to go to Roswell next week.
Hey, we're glad to have you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else we've missed?
Sorry, I don't know what we're supposed to say. I just logged in. I was trying to pick up my kids. They have early release.
That's okay. Hi,
My name.
Emily. I just asked about your reason for attending the course.
Okay. Well, it's always good to learn. So, I'm excited to learn new things and what other people have to share with me.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to jump right on in and talk about coaching and what coaching is. And the history of coaching in this context, which is adapted from, well, it's really like academic coaching or life coaching in the academic world. Um, and so the history of coaching is that coaching really began within the executive roles. And this is like in the late 70s, early 80s. Um, this consultant named Thomas Leonard started this idea about coaching. And a lot of people think about sports coaching when they think about it. And there are some similarities, but there's some very distinct differences. But there are like six major schools of thought around coaching and training organizations or licensing and credentialing organization in the life coaching world. And these are basically their definitions of what coaching is. So can I just have somebody volunteer to read one each? So I'll need 6 people to volunteer, starting with ICF. Can someone read that, please, aloud? Let me just say this really quick. I'm the type of facilitator that likes to be interrupted. So if you have any questions, I don't want you to wait until the end to ask me questions. Um, if you have a questions, please ask it. If you have a comment or a story or an idea that's related to what we're talking about, please join in. I hope this to be a real um, learning experience that will benefit all of us. So I want to pull from the wisdom and the experience in the room. And sometimes one of you can say it better than I can, or think of a better example to illustrate a point. So please, I would like everybody to feel free to join on in with comments and questions. And even if you kind of think, no, I don't believe that, I'd love to, discuss and consider different perspectives. So please join in as much as possible. And so first of all, can I have some different people just to read out these definitions for us,
I'll
please?
go ahead and begin with the first one.
Thank you.
Coaching is partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential.
So that's the International Coaching Federation, which is considered the gold standard in the life coaching world for credentialing.
I'll read the next one. Coaching is transformative process for personal and professional awareness, discovery and growth, and the expansion of possibilities.
So that's the International Association of Coaching, which focuses more on actual demonstrated core competencies rather than actually a approved coaching training system.
I'll read the next one.
Thank
Coaching
you.
is a profession that supports personal and professional growth and development based on individual initiated change in pursuit of specific actionable outcomes.
Thank you. That's Coach U or Coach University, one of the top schools in the country.
I can read the next one. Coaching is built on the cornerstone that we are all naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, and that we all possess the capacity for knowing what is best for ourselves.
Thank you. That's the Coach Training Institute. And they actually, their book is actually considered the Bible of life coaching. It's called Coactive Coaching.
Would you like me to
Please
read the
do.
next one too? Okay. Oh, coaching is partnership that maximizes human potential. We trust that our partners are resourceful and that they have the inner wisdom to overcome obstacles and generate compelling strategies and action plans.
That's coaching for transformation, the biggest school that actually um, fuses life coaching with social justice.
I'll read the last one.
Thank you.
Coaching is unlocking a person's potential to maximize his or her own performance. It is helping them to learn rather than teaching them.
Thank you. And right now, I've lost what CFP is. I'll look it up and let you guys know in a little bit. So just reading all those different definitions of coaching, think about the words that jumped out at you. Did any words jump out at you here?
Naturally creative.
Naturally creative, okay. Growth, okay. Partnering,
Individual initiated.
individual initiated,
Wisdom.
wisdom,
Maximize.
maximize,
Resourceful.
resourceful, and whole,
Transformative.
transformative. So try to keep these words that popped out at you in mind as we go through the rest of the lesson today. So we talked about what coaching is defined as. Now let's talk about what coaching is not. And so earlier I said that it's related to sports coaching, but in sports coaching, the actual coach is in charge, right? The coach writes the play, the coach tells all the athletes what drills to do, teaches them what the plays are, what the strategy is, and then the athletes execute there. So in coaching, the coach is not the one who is in charge. It is actually the person being coached who is in charge. And then what coaching also is not is cheerleading. And I know that I usually get a lot of pushback on that because people always tell me, oh, but I have to cheerlead for my students. And I may be the only one, giving them positive feedback and this and that. So we're going to talk a lot about this when we're together next week. Coaching is not pulling someone to do things. Raise your hand if you ever feel like half of your job is pulling teeth to get your students or your learners to do certain things. Yeah, lots of raised hands. Coaching is not holding the weight of the world on your shoulder, or having to know everything, or be the expert, or be the savior, or have the tools to fix everything. And the number one thing that coaching is not is giving advice. So we're going to watch this quick video, and please let me know if you can hear it.
When you hear the word coaching, what springs to mind? Football coach? Acting coach? Vocal coach? Maybe even a financial coach? Confusing, isn't it? Well, coach has become such a popular title that it's being used by lots of professions, often with no training. Now, sometimes coaching is just a fancy way of saying, I'll ask you a few questions and then tell you what I think you should do. Well, let's clear the air a little bit about coaching. Coaching is often confused with therapy, consulting, and mentoring. Now, those are great helping professions, but they're not professional coaching. Here's the difference. Therapists focus on the past and work to fix what's broken. Consultants provide quantitative analysis and create roadmaps for organizational change. They get paid to provide answers. Mentors help those with less experience. Mentors are already experts in their field and are helping others reach success. Now, there may be some overlaps in approach, but none of these are professional coaching. Professional coaching is a different type of conversation. There's a whole lot of asking and not much telling. Professional coaches are focused on you, helping you design your future, your goals. They're thought-provoking and inspirational. You work on your topic. A professional coach focuses on you. Professional coaches are also discerning listeners, empathetic, creative, intuitive, and curious. They're trained in coaching behaviors and competencies, which makes them really good coaches, and they're bound by professional standards and ethics. A professional coach will be your partner, your advocate, your champion. Want to try things you've only imagined? We're Smith Leadership. We believe it's all about what's possible, not what's limiting. Your future is waiting for you. We'll help you design it. Call us. A professional Smith Leadership coach will speed you along your way.
Okay, so the main thing about coaching, and you will see this picture. I love this image so much. You will probably see it over and over from me, and you will probably hear this over and over from me. And one of the best, in my opinion, aspects about coaching is because the responsibility for the outcomes is transferred to the responsible party. And I cannot even tell you over and over how much I have heard instructors say that they feel responsible for the actions that the students take. They feel responsible for the students' grades. They feel responsible for the students' passing. And it's even in their language, right? We need to pass this test. We need to do this homework. We need to study more. And that's totally the instructor that has deep feelings of ownership in the students' outcomes. And I'm not saying that that's bad at all. And I know that that's part of what expectations are of instructors. And I'm not trying to make you into professional coaches like the video talked about, but to adopt a coach philosophy or a coach approach in your interaction with students is the key here. So it's not about not teaching anymore or the performing with the requirements of your job, whether it's advising, teaching, enrollment, intake, but it's just using a coach approach in helping the students decide what outcome they want from this experience, and then letting them take ownership of it. So when people take ownership and buy-in, then they're more likely to follow through. And we will go way more into that later. And so this is a continuum of about what kind of time that we spend with students. And this can be in a group, in a classroom, or working one-on-one students. And where do we spend most of our time? Are you more directive, where you're telling, instructing, giving advices, and making suggestions? Or is it more non-directive, where you're asking opening questions, reflecting back, listening, coaching? So just thinking about um, what what you currently do. Typically, when you talk to students, where are you on this continuum right now? Can we hear from 3 people, please?
I'm I'm in the instructing portion.
Okay.
As Yeah, I think I'm understanding that right.
Mm-hmm. And so, where's the majority of your time actually spent with students? Doing what task? Are you an instructor? So, you're actually teaching in a class?
Yes.
Okay.
For me specifically.
Okay. Thank you. And 2 others, please.
I think I'm more along the lines of the non-directive style, only because I want to pull for information first, just to get the most information from the student, and then kind of segue into more of the maybe like making suggestions or giving feedback um, part of it.
And in what context would you be working with students and doing that?
So not instructing, but more coaching. Like we will conduct one-on-one student evaluations, and that's where we try to pull information from the student to devise the best plan for them.
Okay.
I just wanted
Okay.
to add something. Yeah, like the reason why I said that is because I'm more in a whole group. That's
Right.
why and I don't know. I didn't know if I was like, am I understanding this correctly? But I'm more in a whole group.
Yes. Thank you for that clarification. And one other person?
So I'm in a classroom. I'm a language arts instructor, and I would say I bounce back and forth between instructing, open questions and paraphrasing, and making suggestions. I'll alternate between those 2 areas given my class and their participation on whatever day.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So it's really not doing one function, right? Especially if you are an instructor. Um, and I've taught coaching um, to a lot of advisors, and I'm like, don't give advice. And they're like, how can you tell us not to give advice? Like, literally, that's our job title, that's our entire job. And again, this is not about completely changing or turning upside down what you do now. This is about how to interject a coaching philosophy and a coach approach into how you already work to actually make it a little bit easier for yourself, hopefully. And again, this coaching conversations um, continuum is more about having less input from the coach and more input from the coachee. So when you're training or teaching, obviously it's you're going to have more input from the instructor as a coach. And if you're doing completely pure coaching, the person being coached is the one who will do the majority of the talking. And so that's a kind of a good gauge when you're thinking about a coaching conversation is who is doing most of the talking, who is doing most of the listening, who is doing most of the teaching. And I am going to skip that for right now. No, I don't think I will. This is a short video on a coach model that is used. So, actually, to learn a coaching is part of a conversation. It's a coaching conversation and a coaching relationship. So, it's a philosophy of what many for for what many of you said stuck out, that naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. And so it's looking at our students as full of potential and able to actually solve their own problems and know what's best for themselves rather than us knowing what's best for them always. So I know before I learned coaching, I used to be um really, well, how can I say this? What I really want to say is full of myself, but I want to say maybe something like ego based or a savior, or I always thought that I knew better. Like I knew what people should do. By nature, I'm a problem solver and I'm an activator. That's actually in my strengths quest, strategic and activator. Meaning when I see a problem, I jump in and I figure out like right away. Not that that's always good because sometimes you need more information or whatever, but I'm just saying my nature is to jump in, solve problems, roll up my sleeves. And so that's the way that I always worked with students too. And sometimes when they were having a challenge, that's what I did. Jumped in, rolled in my sleeves, and solved their problem and told them, all you need to do is this, and this. Well, what would happen when I would tell students, you just need to do this, and this? Either they would come back having done none of it and then be full of shame or like, ooh, I didn't do it, or something like that, or I never saw them again. And how many of you had had either of those experiences? Hands, yeah. Or how many of you even just think, I know exactly what my students need to do to solve their problems? I know exactly what they need to do to solve these challenges. I know the answers for them. Yeah. And it doesn't work. And also I used to lose a lot of sleep worrying about my students because I would take on that responsibilities for solving the problems. And then I'd go home, I'm cooking dinner, and I'm like, I should have told her this, or I should have told him this, or I shouldn't have told him this, or what if I tell him this and then it goes bad? What if it's going to be worse? What if, And I used to um lose so much of my personal time and headspace worrying about my students rather than focusing on my family life, and my recreation, and my time off, and my relaxing and resting. Excuse me, when I was at home. And so, learning coaching and learning this philosophy and looking at my students as being creative, resourceful, and whole, and able to come up with their own solutions. Excuse me. Gosh, I need to get it too. And able to come up with their own solutions, and actually the right solutions, the appropriate solutions, freed me. It freed me to have that conversation and then be done. Of course, I worry about my students and I think about them, but not in a way in which I'm responsible for the outcome. It's a whole different type of worry, I want to say, but a whole different level of concern, I guess. But also, when I'm seeking help from someone or I have a challenge and someone just tries to tell me what to do, and it's like, no, 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 that won't work. And sometimes it's just a waste of time. But when I was turning 50, I'll tell you this quick story. When I was turning 50, I decided that I wanted to really start working out and get healthy. And I had like worked out here and there, and I had been to gym and gone to Zumba and walked and stuff like that, but I had never really had a program. And so I spent $250, which is a lot for me to do something like that too. visit a personal trainer. And that personal trainer that I saw, so I live in Belen and I work in Albuquerque. So it's like a 45-minute commute. I was riding the train. And so I went to see the physical trainer in Albuquerque, Belen. I went in Albuquerque and I went to see this trainer. And the first thing that I went, I told him I wanted to do this. And then he said, "Oh, wow, you need to just come in the morning and work out first thing and then take a shower and go to work. Like that's when you need to do it in the morning." And I was like, "But," and I just said my first "but." And he was like, "But what? Here you are already making excuses. That's why you're 50 years old and you're out of shape." And I was like, whoa, that escalated quickly. And I just kind of like shut down immediately. And it was over for me. I was not even going to listen to another thing he said. And so, yeah, going to the gym and then taking a shower to work is great advice, right? However, I rode on the very earliest train. The very earliest train available only got me to work actually like 10 minutes ahead of time. And so not only could I not go to the gym in the morning before work, it was literally impossible for me to take his advice. So while it's good advice for somebody, it was terrible for me. And he never even asked me. Now, if he would have asked me, when do you see yourself having time to work out? Or whenever you've worked out before, what has been successful? What's the longest that you've actually been committed to working out? How did you do that? What did you learn about yourself? What strengths? I could have told him something like, well, if I have a partner, it's usually better because then I'm accountable to someone. I could have said, I like to dance. I could have said, I don't really know. I get intimidated by all these machines because I don't know how to use them correctly and I don't want to hurt myself more. There's a lot that we could have dialogued on, but because he started right away with the advice and actually shaming me, it was over. And it was the biggest waste of $250 ever. But that's just an example about how even though we think we know it all, and even though we think we know what the student needs to do, we may be telling them to do something that's actually impossible for them. And I just shut down and I didn't even tell him anything and I didn't go back. So I didn't even tell them why that wouldn't work for me. I was like, he's not worth my breath. But anyway, that's just a quick example. And when we talk about a coaching conversation, there's actually a model for the conversation. And this is a very short example of one model of a coaching conversation.
Being a coach is all about asking good, open questions. And this is where the GROW model comes in. GROW is a simple but effective framework that helps your coachee understand their challenges properly and identify what their next actions should be in order to reach a solution. Let's take a look at how it works. G stands for goals. The first few questions will help your coachee to establish an appropriate objective. For example, what do you want to achieve? What does your goal mean to you? When will you meet your goal? R stands for reality. You should then ask your coachee to think practically about their goal and how it would look in reality using questions like, what support do you need to achieve your goal? What challenges do you expect to encounter? How might you deal with them? O stands for options. Next, ask your coachee to think of 3 or 4 things they could do that might help them reach their goal. Then work with your coachee to evaluate these options by asking questions like, what are the pros and cons of each option? Or what factors will you use to weigh up these options? W stands for will or way forward. Finally, establish how committed your coachee is to the actions they have agreed. To do this, ask the coachee to rate their commitment on a scale of 1 to 10. Explore together what would need to change or happen to get them to a 9 or even a 10. Identify some practical actions, such as blocking out an hour a week to work exclusively towards reaching their goal. Encourage your coachee to imagine how they will feel if they meet their objectives. Visualizing a successful outcome will motivate your coachee even more. So there you have it. By using the GROW model, you can help your coachee stay on track, engage in some genuine self-reflection, and identify relevant and realistic actions that will help them achieve their overall objectives.
So, what did you notice about the different steps in that GROW model? What did you notice as they were going through that that video and talking about the different steps? Did you notice anything?
They were moving up the plant, like trying to say that every step is going to put you closer basically to your goal.
Nice. Yeah. Good visual. Like a metaphor for growing. Yes. Okay. So Franny says it seems that coaching is assuming that you have a one-to-one situation, which is often not possible in a classroom with 20 students. And yes, and it is possible with 20 students. And I want you to hold that thought because we will talk about it in a minute.
Peggy, this is Ronnie. There are two others using this, okay?
I'm getting some feedback. I can't. Ronnie?
I just wanted to say that there's
You're muted right now.
I just wanted to say that this is Ronnie, but Tom is the one that said that it seems like he
I think that if she has like two sessions going like double,
Yeah.
I think that causes that interference.
Thank you, Maricela. Do you have like your laptop and
Yeah,
your
when you
phone on or
when you
something?
do that, you have to mute one of them completely in order to have both of them going.
Thank you.
Okay. We do have two sessions going, but I'll just try to shut up.
Please don't.
She just wanted to let you know that it was actually Mr. Tom who messaged, and he just added that it seems that coaching is assuming. So she just wanted to let you know that it's not her credit.
I understand. Okay, so there's more than one person on the call.
That is correct. So it's Mr. Tom, Mrs. Rowney, and then myself. My name is Lisbeth.
I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And an earlier message in the chat said, I am not here to say, here's what I would do. I am not they, so cannot tell someone else what to do. Yes. And then the coachee is finding the solutions. Yes. So in that GROW model, the coach was always asking questions, was never telling, was never giving advice. And so in this, I want you to think about these next statements, excuse me. And tell me, is this coaching, mentoring, or directing? And you can just go ahead and write it in the chat. Okay, the first one, when something similar happened to me, this is what I did. What kind of approach is that? Coaching, mentoring, or directing? Directing, mentoring, mentoring, mentoring. Yes, definitely being more directive, not coaching at all, because first of all, it's not a question, right? And so coaching is built from questions, powerful and provocative questions. Thank you. Now, here's the second one. Have you been faced with a similar challenge before? How did you solve it? Was that successful? Is that coaching, mentoring, or directing? And so those two questions can both be, well, statements. The first is a statement, and then a question can be the same response to a student that comes with a challenge, right? And look at the difference in the approach in talking to the students. This happened to me before, and this is how I solved it. Or when have you solved something before? What does that do? That instantly helps pull out some strengths, helps them remember, oh yeah, I've been successful before, I've solved problems before, I've had challenges before. And then here's the third one. This is what we need to do to pass that test. Coaching, mentoring, or directive? Directive. Does anybody think that's an appropriate statement, and why? Because I don't think it's inappropriate, first of all, but does anybody have any reaction to that statement? This is what we need to do to pass the test.
The way that you're phrasing that, you are determining what the student or the learner should do to get an outcome, but you haven't really asked the student what they already know. I'm just thinking ownership. You're not letting the student think for themselves. You're doing the thinking and the planning.
Thank you. What about that? What? Go ahead.
We is a plural pronoun. You cannot do something for them. They can't. You're not going.
Yes, you cannot do something for them. Continue, please.
Baker's better.
Peggy, Eva has her hand raised. I don't know if that's from before or.
Thank you, Nancy.
It was from before.
Thank you. So what about we need to do to pass the test? Is there a we here in passing the test?
You're not taking the test. The learner is taking the test.
Right. And so again, that ownership that you talked about a minute ago. Let's do the next question. One thing you need to consider is coaching, mentoring, or directive. I see directive, a coaching. Directive. Okay, so you're about to tell them what they need to consider, right? One thing you need to consider is this, really directive. Could be from your own perspective. Now that you understand the requirements for this assignment, what's your plan to get it accomplished? Coaching. And so earlier, when someone said that this is taking the assumption of a one-on-one relationship or a one-on-one conversation with the student, think about asking this question to a whole class, talking about the requirements, talking about the assignments, talking about whatever it is, the project, and then asking the entire class, making sure they understand it, and then saying, now that you do understand it, what's your plan? And so right there, that's a group coaching question. And it could be maybe like a thinking pair share. Okay. So what's your plan to get this accomplished, to get this project done or whatever? Think about it, write about it. Everybody sits there, writes their own plan or whatever. Okay, turn to your partner, pair share. And so they start talking to each other about how they're going to do it, talk it out. And then you can even train students to pair coach each other and things like that. So only ask questions like in the video they talked about, okay, now that you do this, what challenges do you see? And how do you think you'll meet those challenges? Just any of this can be adapted from one-to-one conversations into a group situation between coach and entire group. And then within peers, you can train your class to coach each other in this way. And not only that, to be accountability partners for each other with asking simple questions like this. What's your plan to get this done? And then it could be simple as, how are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? Where are you going to do it? Who's going to help you? What support do you need? Whatever it is. And that can be done in literal a few minutes. It's not like you have to sit and go through this entire conversation and this model, boom, 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 or in a linear stage. This is just taking on a coach approach or adding in a coach philosophy to what you are already doing. Like literally, that's not going to take any more effort when you're teaching a class, and yet it'll give you big results because you are letting them take the ownership and the responsibility for how they're going to complete this project. And when they decide how they're going to do it, when they're going to do it, how they're going to do it, where they're going to do it, they take the ownership, they get the buy-in, they know what's impossible, they know what's possible. They know if they need to ride the train in the morning and go to the gym, that's impossible. But they can figure out when it is possible for them to squeeze this in to get this project done, what they're going to need, whether they have to go to the library because they don't have Wi-Fi, whether they need to go to the computer lab, when is the lab open, whatever. It's making a plan that they get to make that's individualized to whatever's possible for them. Can you see the difference? Or does that satisfy your earlier question, Tom? It was Tom, right, that asked that question?
Partially.
Yes.
Partially?
Yeah, it satisfies it partially. I'm just back at square one. I'm a cynic, and I need
Okay.
to know why even coaching, why even consider it in the classroom in the first place.
Okay.
I'm back where at the beginning of your presentation is what's the case for coaching?
Okay.
So
Well,
convince me.
okay. So it's not my job to convince you.
Right.
It is my job to present some information and facilitate and pull wisdom out from the whole group. And it's also my job to respect your perspective and your values. And I'm not picking on you here. This is for everyone here because every single class, at the end of the class, and I've been doing this for 7 years, someone has told me, I don't buy it. And I'm like, okay, it's better to say, I don't buy it and I don't think it'll work for me and it's not within my value system, um, than to, and that's great and that's fine. And there are many options for instructional design and the way that they present. And this is just one that I love and that has worked best for me and that I have seen work for many other people. So yeah, I appreciate you asking those type of questions because other people in the class may also have them, but may not have the courage to. So I look forward
What
to it.
what I like is the fact that you can ask open-ended questions to get people thinking about what they can do for themselves. That's the part that struck a bell with me.
Okay, then you've already bought into the philosophy.
Really?
I'm just teasing you. I'm just teasing you. But yes, that is the whole bottom line foundation of coaching right there. You said it. That is that the people can figure out, all people can figure out for themselves. Naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. Not broken, not incapable. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. This is going to be a blast.
Peggy, just thinking about Tom and Emily and I all teach together, and English is second language. And I was just thinking, this really may not relate, but today we were in class and I told the students, I said, take notes on this. And if they're not taking notes, I feel kind of like disrespected because they're not taking notes. But maybe that person doesn't need to take notes. Or maybe, like one student said, I would rather take a picture and then I'll transfer it at home. Maybe that works for them. And we just think they have to do it our way.
Wow. Yeah, so that made you feel disrespected. That's really interesting. And then you came to this realization that they know best for themselves how they're going to be able to learn this information. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Really important. And I'm going to move on because I don't want to run out of time in presenting this course to you. But the way that this is going to work is, so we're going to take a short break and then we'll come back at 3:00 and we'll do part 2 in virtual session. And then next week on Thursday and Friday is live for those of you who are pre-registered, and you actually still can register. There's still a little room. And that'll be for 2 full days in Roswell. And then in between November and January will be time to practice. And so when we leave Roswell, you'll have actually a coaching partner that you'll work with as a peer, a professional peer that you'll practice with. And then you'll also be asked to actually practice within your classes or with individual students, whatever works within your job position. And then we'll come back together in January for 3 more virtual sessions. But we also have ongoing professional learning opportunities, and I do webinars on the first Wednesday of every month. It's a prepared webinar with a different coaching skill. And then on the third Wednesday of every month, I do a holding space session, which is just an open type of office hour things where I just jump on and people jump on and say, I have this question or whatever. So there's no prepared lesson, but it's just people that jump on and have a specific question, or maybe they want to be coached to figure something out or whatever. And so that is what our outline will look like. And then the modules in our coaching conversation next week in Roswell, these are all the different things that are topics that we'll be doing. And it's going to be very interactive just comfortably. We'll be moving around. It will not be death by PowerPoint. It's all going to be activities, and I'm hoping, again, a lot of you have already opened up and shared your wisdom with us today, and so I'm hoping to get a lot more of that next week during the actual class. And the way you can get the most out of this course is, number one, to make a commitment. And the research show that when teachers attend professional learning opportunities, and I think Maricela said that earlier, she loves professional development. She likes to learn, and many of you said that when you introduced yourselves, that when you have a larger toolkit, then of course that's just going to benefit your students. And the second one is to participate fully. We're gonna be talking about growth mindset, and actually talking about thinking and learning about learning. And everything that we do in this training, you can come back and do almost everything. You can come back and do with your students. So you can help your students think and learn about learning as they are making these plans and goals. And we'll show you like pretty simple ways in order to do that with an entire class. Excuse me.
I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, good.
But I have a question. I have to take my wife to Albuquerque on the 17th. But you're also doing the training on the 18th, Friday the 18th,
yes.
in person?
Yes. Excuse me. Yes.
I won't be there on the 17th, but I can be there the 18th.
Okay, that'll work. And then the third one is to have courage to experiment. So Brene Brown says that greatness comes from being vulnerable. And so as from the very first day, you're going to be practicing coaching each other, but we're not going to be doing any kind of role play and say, okay, pretend you're a student and you're blah, 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 blah. We're actually going to use our own real lives, our own ideas, goals, or challenges, whatever, as we practice coaching, because I really want you to experience realistic, authentic coaching so you can understand the power of it. So both as a coach, you will have the opportunity to both coach and both be coached. And it's like the Vegas rule, right? Whatever happens at coach training stays at coach training. And it's not that it's going to be really, really, really personal and things like that. However, we do expect people to be really authentic so that you can feel the power on both sides of the coaching conversation by actually getting something personal out of it that could really help you with some kind of goal or challenge. And then the fourth thing is put the theory into practice. And so in between that month, I'm really going to ask you to, even you, Tom, just kidding, even if you're a cynic, to try to practice it, to in those 6 weeks, to practice with your colleagues, practice with your students, practice in your personal life, to just see, because when I learned coaching, like it really changed the way that I communicate with my children, with my husband, with my family, in a much better way for me. And of course, my children are already adults, so they do know what's better for themselves by now. But that really helped my communication skills in all my life. And so today is November 9th, so this is a repeat, and I didn't change that. But in the Google, one of the things is that we'll be using Google Classroom, and it's going to be more or less a repository for our activities. And even though it does have grades and you will be assigned things, the grades are not like, I'm not going to be grading you like ABCD or whatever a percentage. It's going to be completed or not completed. And so one of them is a Quizlet and mindset activity, and I will send you these in the email. I'll send you the code to the Google Classroom to get in. And the other thing is the project implicit test. And this is about implicit bias. And in the assignment, I ask you to take a bias test, and there are probably 10 or 15 different ones, and then to talk about it. And I don't want you to like report your results. Like, I don't want you to say, I found out that I was biased against left-handed people. That's not the point of this. I want you to talk about the experience of even thinking about bias and implicit bias as an educator, and the idea about being aware, self-aware when it comes to bias. And what we talked about today so far, why are we going to talk about bias next? Are there any questions, or were my instructions clear on this?
I signed in and I didn't get any feedback as to whether I tried to register. I didn't get feedback whether it was accepted or not. So I don't know. I registered online and I'm not sure it went through, but I thought it did, but I didn't get any feedback.
Okay.
It did go through.
Thank you, Tina.
No problem.
But we can still do them, correct, Peggy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So will you send us this now, Peggy, or what?
I will.
Well, I'll put the class link, the invitation link in the chat, and then I'll put these two links in there as well.
And it's actually, I have it already. You send it on the syllabus?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like, I seen it. It's also in there for week 2.
Mm-hmm. So we will talk about research and academic coaching in Roswell, but these are some of the outcomes that happen when instructors adopt a coaching philosophy. And I'm not going to read this for you. I just want you to read it for yourself really quickly. And so our promise to you in this course is that it will be a valuable professional learning experience. That I'll share with you my 10 years of experience and learning. And so I love to learn. I'm a lifelong learner. I've taken a bunch of different coach training courses throughout the country, and in a lot of different contexts, and been able to adapt them here, and that it's applicable to you right now, no matter what your job is, the content of this course. And so we're going to have like 10 minutes, but really clearly, if we could just in the chat write one word that describes the value that you received from being with me for the last hour. I'm assuming you gained some value. So if you did gain value from spending the last hour with me, please write it in the chat. We'll do a quick chat storm. And I will just read them aloud. The one words. Remembered that I had forgotten a lot. Honesty. It's important to listen. Capital listen. Humility. New possibilities. Aligns with my mindset already. Listening. I can use this on myself to accomplish my own goals. Yes. Okay, so we have a 10-minute break. For those of you that are joining me at 3 o'clock for the second week, I will see you in about 8 minutes now. Okay? Learn how to ask effective questions. Thank you all for being here today. See you in about 10. Thank you. Hi, Halle. Halle, right?
Yes, that's right. Hello.
Okay, good. We're going to be starting in about 7 or 8 minutes, all right?
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Be right back. Thanks
Thanks
for
for
joining.
having me. I appreciate it.
Hello.
Hello, Peggy.
Hello.
Hi, hi. I'm wondering how many people I got back.
Yeah, when we are back.
We have Tom and Franny, and I think Beth is coming in a minute. There are three of us on under Beth.
Thank you. I had that Propel background, but it was distracting me because I kept feeling like I was a floating head.
That's why you can see my bedroom.
I'm in my dining room, but I was in my grandson's bedroom a while ago. Are you back, Tina? Are you here? If I can just get a hand raise so I know how many people are actually back, that would be helpful. Thank you. I wish I could view everyone. There we go. I can. But I can't view their hand raise this way.
Peggy, when you look in the participants, you should be able to see.
Yeah, I see the people, but I see all the names, but I'm not able to see hand raises in that way.
I see them off to the right.
I see them on mine before the list of the people. There's hands raised.
I do not see that in mine. That is weird. I see in the let's see.
Are you looking in the people menu?
Yes.
Huh.
Okay, now I see. I just had to scroll. Okay, I got it.
All right.
So I see 6 raised hands. And a lot of other people here that don't have raised hands yet. Okay, but I see Nancy's hand raised. There it is. Okay. I was going to say, I see her on the bottom also.
Yeah, that's interesting. Nancy, are you in here twice?
Are you on a phone and a computer or something? So 8 hands.
Okay, my hand is raised, but I am going to leave for about 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay. So it's 3:05, and so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming back, for hanging with me. This is week number 2, and I realize that some of you that just came today will not have had time to do the implicit bias test. So that's okay. And also the growth mindset quiz, which is we won't be talking about today, but we will be talking about in Roswell. And again, this is part of Propel. And so this is like the activities we're gonna talk about today, and also some of the priming activities and what we talked about last week. I'll just keep saying last week, even though it was earlier today, just so I can kind of keep it straight in my mind, if that's all right. So you guys, you all, excuse me, will have an idea of what I'm focusing on when we move forward. So the first thing I want to talk about is this is from a psychologist and Dr. Sperry, and this is an illustration of how our behavior is formed. So we have all these different senses and feelings that put input into our brain that we receive from all our different senses, right? And they form our perspectives, our beliefs, our values, and our memories. What kind of input do you think that we get from our senses that affect our perspectives, beliefs, values, and memories? Where do we receive that input from?
Our environment, like where we are,
Definitely.
our family,
our physical environment, our family. Yes. Society, yes.
Our experiences too, like they may change maybe.
Our experiences, yes. Our culture. Social media, yes. Huge one. We're finding out about social media and political and voting behavior, right? I mean, huge one.
Movies, even though it's not a movie.
Movies. Yes. And so all these things help us form our values and our beliefs and the perspectives that we get. And all of those things inform the decisions that we need, which religion, good ones, and schools, my nemesis, social media. But all of those inform our behavior, right? And so when we talked about last week, I'll say, about how I know what students need to do. What we're doing is we're looking through our eyes, right? Through our lens and through our perspective. And when we are giving advice or making suggestions to others, it is through our lens. And every single one of our literal lenses are different, right? And so we've all been influenced in different ways. And so there is really no way to judge another person what is best for them and what will be best for them, because all the advice and everything we think and everything we judge is through our lens, through our own perspective. And everything that learners do, decisions they make, behaviors that they perform or don't perform, is all from their lens. And so this first section that we're doing virtually is all about self-awareness. That's the theme of these 2 weeks, is self-awareness. And so the first is understanding that we all have different perspectives and different motivations and different beliefs, values, and value systems. So, whoops. Whoa, I just totally clicked over. So, explicit and implicit bias. So, I know that many of you were not able to complete that implicit bias test, but is there anyone that could just define the difference between explicit and implicit bias, or just define both of those things?
Explicit bias, concrete and obvious biases we have based on biases and stereotypes.
Yes. Obvious and concrete.
And then
yes.
The implied or less obvious that we might have due to experiences and stereotypes.
So excellent explanation. And so implicit is like less obvious, or what's the other word you used?
Whoops. They're not as directly noticeable. They're implied.
Not as directly noticeable, implied. Yes, different bias. And you could also, you might call it a conscious and subconscious bias. Obvious versus hidden it is in our chat. Dangerous. Yes. Can you say a little bit more about that, Madeline?
Hi. Yeah, the implicit is maybe it's implied, or maybe we're totally oblivious to it and we don't have any sense for it or any consciousness of it, and it could really get us into trouble.
Right. And in what way could it get us into trouble? Can you think of an example,
Well,
Madeline, or anyone?
in any aspect of our lives, personal, family, work, career, community, if we're holding these biases, depending on what they may be, the way we raise our children.
They might negatively impact others. They might affect what opportunities we or our perceptions and biases of other people or even an environment.
Yes.
What I believe is that you cannot be partial, because if God is not partial, then how dare you presume to be partial?
Yes. So I have a little quick example. So I was attending a conference, in one of the breakout sessions. We were asked to go to someone, pair up with someone who didn't look like us. And so I paired up. This man actually came to me, and he was a tall Black man wearing a suit. He had on a jacket, a tie, a shirt, pants, nice shoes. This was on a Friday when I worked at the University of New Mexico. And I was wearing jeans and a UNM polo, and, it was casual Friday, and he was in the suit. And so the speaker told us to make assumptions about the other person based on what we saw. And so I looked at him and I was like, okay, I'm assuming that you're in administration here at UNM because, the way that you're so, because you're dressed so professionally. And then the person had to tell us whether those assumptions were correct or incorrect. And he told me incorrect. He said, I am an advisor here at UNM. He said, but when I first started and I dressed like the rest of advisors, I got stopped by security so often going into my office that I started having to wear a tie so that I wouldn't get stopped by security. And so do you think that's explicit or implicit bias?
That would be implicit.
No.
Okay.
Somebody said both.
Both. Someone says both. Yes, it was implicit biases of thought or maybe a subconscious idea because of messages that we've received. What do we see on TV? What do we see on the news? And then what kind of stereotypes are developed because of that? And then based on these stereotypes that we're either conscious or unconscious about it, then that directs our behavior, right? And so then security guards were acting from either their explicit or implicit bias. You're right. We don't know. We don't know, but it happened often enough that it was an issue for this gentleman. And so it affected the way that the security guards communicated and interacted with him at work. And so I'm going to show this 2.5-minute video from PBS.
Let's look at how to measure bias in ourselves and in others.
Can you hear it?
Here's Dolly Chuk from NYU.
We sent emails to real professors in real universities.
They contacted over 6,500 professors at random from 260 American universities.
We sent them an email that looked like it came from a real person asking for a meeting to learn more about the PhD program in that university. But we randomly assigned whether the fictional person sending that email had a name that sounded male or female and sounded white, Chinese, Hispanic, Indian, or Black. What we found that is if you were a white male, you were far more likely to receive a response back than if you were in all those other categories put together as a group.
Some of this could be explicit racism, but it's far more likely that in many cases, these professors are just busy. They can't respond to every email they get, so they kind of let their subconscious decide for them. And that's where their biases come through. Research shows that our racial biases are often more about who we choose to help than who we don't. And we tend to help people who are similar to us. But you aren't 6,500 randomly selected professors. So how can you figure out where you might be making similar unconscious choices? First, there's a well-known test online you can take that can help show you biases you hold. Or
just do an audit. Whatever data you have, whether it's formal data in a computer or whether it's just data that's sort of anecdotal, look at the data. For example, I met this fantastic executive in Silicon Valley. He takes great pride in being someone who actively tries to achieve gender balance on his teams, knowing that Silicon Valley and tech are skewed heavily male.
So he looked at his professional social network, his Twitter, his LinkedIn.
He found his network was far more skewed male than he expected. So there's a place where he could actively work to shift that, and that's what he's been doing since then.
So this is not a scientifically exact self-audit, but it can still be useful, and you can audit anything. So maybe start by taking that online test for bias. Maybe check out whose emails you're replying to. But you can also audit yourself for implicit bias by asking a friend to observe you in the real world. If you're a teacher, have people look at who you call on most in class, whatever your interactions are.
One practical thing that people should do is take stock of their friends.
it would be very useful for people to actually make lists of people with whom they spend time.
Look for patterns. That's the audit. That's the assessment we can all do.
Let's look at how to measure bias in ourselves
Whoops,
and
what
in others.
happened there? So that little video focused on race, but I think there are so many different areas in higher education and in adult education that come into play. I was a financial aid officer at the campus before, and I used to hear over and over and over again that, oh, just wait till 20 days when students get their Pell Grants, and then, half of them will disenroll. They're just here for the money. And I would hear things like this over and over. And so I went and I looked at it like really closely and figured out the statistics. And on our campus, 7% of our students were dropping after the financial aid disbursement date. 93% stayed, 7% dropped. And I was like, well, how did that become so pervasive for such a small percentage that it just became this stereotype and this story that's just told over and over and over that is bought by people over and over and over when it's not even true. 7% drops. So yes, there is a very small percentage that are there for the money. But that's one of the ways that I would counter when I would hear messages like that in a meeting or whatever. I would just call it out, and I would just say, well, what do the statistics show? Like if someone would say whatever, or, there's a lot of things that we hear about our students and that I've heard over the years about, about the abilities of our students, or that maybe the kind of work that we do, or even if we who work in this field believe in the ability of our students to really be successful, to finish, to pass their high school equivalency, to learn English fluently, and to be a contributing member of society. What is a contributing member of society anyway? Like, who made up that language, and what does it mean to them? And how do these ideas get ingrained in our whole American experience? And I'm going off on a tangent a little bit, but it's important as instructors that we're aware of this. So even in that video, when they talked about the 6,500 professors or whatever, and the way that they were answering, they weren't specifically saying that all these professors were racist. They were saying they're overloaded, and it's kind of like subconscious. They really believe that. And so I think it's important for us to be self-aware when our biases get in the way. And so there's a comment, it is a lie, but people begin to believe it. It persists because the echo of the lie. Yes. Yes. And that happens in many areas of life, especially with social media, right? But when we are coaching and when we are helping students, and if we are going to buy in to that philosophy, the underlying foundation of coaching, which is all students are creative, resourceful, and whole. Another way is, Carl, you can unconditional positive regard. So, that's used in therapy, and not that we are, we're staying in our lane on coaching versus counseling, but unconditional positive regard. Does anybody have any thoughts on that, or in your studies before about unconditional positive regard?
Haven't heard the term. What does it mean?
So it's actually out of the counseling world, and what it is to look at your patients in that world, their patients, of course, in unconditional positive regard. So not making judgments negatively about them right away. It's like the believing that all people are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. So not looking at a broken or a deficit-based model, but instead looking at a strengths-based model.
They're not a problem we have to fix in the world, or a goal we're helping them reach.
Excellent. They're not a problem we have to fix in the world. Okay, I feel like we have to be careful what we follow, especially leaders. Not all leaders are good leaders. Yes. So we have to be really discerning always, right? Because it's very easy to fall into those things. And so another quick example about unconscious bias is that I was on the diversity team, and a student came and wanted to change his course. This was when I was on the college side, on the credit side, and he wanted to change his course, but it was already after the drop date or the change date. And he came to me and he said, I went and I told, I went to the student services office and I told them that I wanted to change my class, and they told me the only option I had was to drop. He said, I don't want to drop this class, this math class. It's going to take me forever. If I get out of sequence, it's going to take me longer to graduate, blah, blah, blah. I need to pass this class semester, he said, but I'm offended by the instructor. And so I asked him about it, and he said that the instructor it was an accounting class, and they were instructor created materials. And so they were doing payroll. And this was a whole unit on payroll for domestic help. And so all of the questions said something like, Mr. and Mrs. Smith employed a gardener named Pedro and a housekeeper named Maria. Pedro and Maria work X hours at X amount of money, and what percentage of their payroll, blah, 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 went into it. And so the student asked him, why is this Mr. and Mrs. Smith? And why is the household help Pedro and Maria? And the instructor said, because I want all of this work that you do in my class to be realistic. And so was that explicit or implicit bias? Or was it realistic, like the instructor said?
Explicit.
Explicit?
I feel like he's got this implied bias that only a person with a Hispanic might be a gardener and a housekeeper, when that's really not true.
Right.
But it's a very implied stereotype. It's become a really.
Yes. And so that is I think, could be called a simple example that had a huge impact on that student and probably many others. And so that's why it's really important for us to always be aware of the messages that we're giving to the students and our ability and our belief in them, in their ability to pass, to succeed, to progress. And part of that is just asking questions, just being curious. We'll go way more into powerful questions next week and do a lot of practice and dialogue around that. But the foundation of all this is that unconditional positive regard, the naturally creative, resourceful, and whole, the underlying philosophy of this whole coaching relationship and this trusting relationship. So last week I talked about, you tell students do this, and this, and then they've done half of it, done some of it, you never see them again, or they come back and they're like, oh, I didn't do it. Oops, they go like this and they feel shame. And when you can do, like when we talked also last week about how can you do this with a group rather than the one-on-one person. So when you tell students, okay, here's the requirement for the class. Okay, what's your plan to get it done? And you can have 30 students, you're going to have 30 different plans, right? And they can have accountability partners and they can step in and become responsible with each other. But the thing is when it doesn't work, what failed? The plan or the person?
The plan.
The plan. And when a student comes and says, I didn't do it or I couldn't do it, and the message is, how does the plan need to be changed? Excuse me. Can you see the difference in the messaging to the student about what they're able to accomplish or not accomplish?
Well, you just didn't want it bad enough in order to make it happen. The working with right now needs to be able to so that you can accomplish what you want more effectively.
Yes. So it was the plan that failed. So it's much easier for me to come back to someone and say, the plan didn't work, instead of saying, I didn't work. The plan failed instead of saying, I failed. And I do have some raised hands.
It's also not labeling that person as a failure. It's just saying these are the actions that didn't work and it's an opportunity to try again. A lot of times when someone gets labeled or feels labeled, regardless of what's actually said, they feel like a failure. I can't come back because I failed. Instead, that didn't work, let's try again.
Yes. And I have a raised hand from the group at Roswell. Is that a raised hand?
Our main panel was going off, so we had to click on something. So it's just a technical difficulty.
Oh, okay, thanks. So I think that thank you all for contributing to this conversation, and I think that it's an important one and something very important to really ponder, because the other thing is that when you are in non-judgment of students, we go back to where I said you're also not a cheerleader. Approval is also judgment. And so it's hard to withdraw approval, I want to say. I don't have a good way to say it. Maybe one of you does. But when when you're talking about a plan and whether a plan didn't work or not, then it's outside of the person, right? And so that will make the student more likely to be honest with you, because they're not going to come to seek your approval. And so they may not, if they are seeking your approval, they may not want to disappoint you. And so they may not show up again, or they may not be honest. They may, I don't know. But when you remove it from them as a person, and let's talk about the plan worked, the plan didn't work, we need to tweak your plan. Then they can be really, really honest. And really, they need to be honest with themselves more than you, but that helps create that trusting relationship with the instructor. And how many times have we had students that just drop off that were doing so well all of a sudden, and then we're left like wonder what happened to them? Where did they go? Or they didn't come to me? Or we hear later on, or they come back a year later, and tell us something went on, and you're like, that would have been easily solvable or something. But the point is to make ourselves approachable for things like that by remaining in non-judgment, in unconditional positive regard, in treating them as if they're creative, resourceful, and whole, so that they can, number one, have buy-in to the actions. First of all, plan their own actions, get buy-in for those actions, know whether those actions are impossible or possible, and then be able to look at them. They can be creative, they can use critical thinking skills, they can plan for challenges, they can plan for support that they think they may need, and they can also look at it as outside themselves, so they can gain self-efficacy through success. Not build their self-esteem by saying, you can do it, I know you can do it, I'm proud of you, that's a great plan. Remaining in non-judgment, always. I got this plan, blah, blah, blah. What do you think, teacher? And it's like, okay, it's a plan, and it sounds reasonable. And what are different considerations that you need to think about in this plan? What are challenges that you haven't thought of? What support do you need to let it happen? And so that's really hard. Now, after there has been some successes, it's okay to high five, good job, but not during the planning and during that stage. Even approving of the plan is judgment. Reactions?
I like that approval isn't really my business. This is the coachee's responsibility, and therefore the success or lack thereof rests on them, not on me. All I'm there for is basically to bounce ideas off of, not to approve or disapprove. And quite honestly, they've lived such a different life than me, most of my students have, that I wouldn't really know if a plan would succeed or not. And it's if they think it'll work, then good, and maybe they'll be more motivated to carry through with it.
Yes. Thank you. You said that much more eloquently than I did. Yes.
The idea to be more neutral and students rather than reinforcing with positive affirmation. I'm not sure if I worded that well.
You cut off right at the end, so I didn't hear.
it's not super great. But so rather this, we can do this, we're gonna get this done and get you where you, and that positive affirmation and encouragement is the idea to be more, is the for our teachers to be more neutral, encourage and support them instead.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay.
And why? And why?
Is it to help them find the validation and approval rather than in another person?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. And so, that's like the $1 million question, right? How do I motivate my students? And you talk about all these different ways to motivate. And the name of this class is Motivational Coaching. And next week in Roswell, we kind of smooshed, and that's a technical term, we smooshed motivational interviewing with coaching. And we'll be talking about that too. And there's places for affirmations in motivational interviewing and also in coaching. But we also have to be careful about our bias in the way that we approve, right? And you have that affinity bias that the video talked about a little bit. It's like we approve of things like us, right? That look like us, act like us, believe like us. We seek out people that are the same as us. And I've heard it a million times when we're doing, I've heard it a million times when I've been on interviews, on interview committees. We want to select someone that fits in well with the group. And it's like, okay, well, do we want to fit into someone that fits in well with us? Or do we want to choose someone that fits in well with our students? Or what do we mean by fit in? Do we want everybody to sit in the meeting and say, yeah, yeah, yeah? Or if we want someone to say, I'm a cynic. What about this? Where are we going to learn? How are we going to grow if all we surround ourselves is those who think, act, and look like us? And so there's an excellent comment here that says, we want them to take agency or responsibility. Yes. Yes. Bottom line, we believe they're capable. We believe they're naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. We treat them with positive regard. That's unconditional. They don't have to earn this positive regard from us. They don't have to have done something in their past, because you know what? Their past is none of our business. And their plan and what is impossible or possible for them is also none of our business. But if they can do that and take agency, responsibility, buy-in, then they're most likely to follow through on the plan of action that they made for themselves. And if they know when they come back to us and report whether that plan worked or the plan didn't work, that they're not going to be judged, then they can be honest and they can be responsible and they can change their plan like they need to without fear of shame, blame, or more negative experiences with school. And here I am stereotyping, right? And assuming that all of our students have had negative experiences in school. That's not necessarily the case. We know there's a million reasons under the sun why students didn't complete traditional high school and are coming back for an HSC or coming early for an HSC, whatever the case may be. So there you go. I just uncovered one of my implicit biases. However, I try to remain self-aware and call myself out. My friends and I hope I don't offend anyone with this, but when you have you ever heard of that game that's called bullshit? And someone says something and you're like, I call bullshit on Joe for blah, blah, blah. It's like, I just called bullshit on myself. And so that's what we do. It's like our little game when we are being self-aware of what we're saying and realize that that's something biased or whatever. And then we say that, that we call bullshit on ourselves. And so that's what I just did. And so that's trying to be self-aware of, in my position right now as a facilitator of learning, I want to make sure that I don't perpetuate a stereotype, which I almost just did. And so what is this plan that is out of sight of bad feelings if there is a failure? So earlier or last week, we talked about when you're with the group and you're talking about students have this goal. They're in your class for a reason. And so if you can spend the time in the beginning of going through a study kind of plan, an academic plan, some of you do it in class, some of you do it with intake people, some of you have an advisor, some of you have a coach. Wherever it is, in most programs that I've seen, there is a point where a student creates this academic plan or these goals. And so that is what this plan is. But it could also be a plan just to complete this one project. It could be a plan to get through this five-week term, whatever it is, like when you're with the whole group. Okay, well, this is first class. This is the first class of the term. These are my expectations for the class, blah, blah, blah. Now that you understand that, how are you going to be successful? What are you going to plan to do in order to make this a successful learning experience for you? Does that answer your question? I can't wait to be in person. I'm really tired of Zoom right now. Yes. Okay. Thank you for that answer. So I want to just look at the slide really quickly about how to decrease unconscious bias and flex. I really like this one because I think of being flexible, and so flex is focus, learn about others, engage in dialogue, and expand the options. And really it's just to tune into your emotions. And earlier, Nancy said that when students wouldn't do something, oh, correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, because I don't want to misstate this, that she would feel disrespected. And so
that's exactly right.
That's exactly right. That you would feel disrespected. And then she said, what was the second part of that?
That I realized, that the student knew more about how they were going to learn it and then maybe doing it my way.
So then she called BS on herself and said, oh, I need to realize that, the student knows best in this situation. And so that's being self-aware. That's an excellent example of being self-aware and taking our own emotions out of it. Yeah, I think it's very normal for instructors to feel disrespected or feel exhausted or feel like I'm giving and doing all this. And it feels like I'm pulling teeth. We talked about that earlier, with these learners. And it's true. And all those feelings are normal. And if we start handing over that responsibility to the responsible party, we can reduce those feelings of anxiety. And that's what I love about learning coaching, is that it really does, or in my situation, it really made my job so much easier, so much less stress. And I saw better results with students. So learning about others, about how their experiences have shaped their perspectives, consider how they see the situation, and how you're going to find out. You ask them, think about how your actions have impacted them, like the accounting instructor that made those word problems that really impacted the students. Ask open-ended questions. Listen to understand, not to debate. Brainstorm possible solutions. Be flexible ways about different ways to reach a common goal. That's exactly what Nancy just said. I'm going to be flexible because my way is not always the best way. Students can have multiple ways to reach the end of this goal, which is learning this new language. And my way is not the best way always. Oh, wow, that's interesting. Can you unmute and tell us more about that? About your daughter drawing pictures? Please, if you want to.
We'll try, but she has Asperger's, and so she draws everything. And I used to think she wasn't paying the slightest bit of attention. And then it took me years to realize that she said, look at this picture. And it was sometimes a very simple picture, but she could recall whole hours of Bible lectures because she drew a picture of something, or two or three things. And she did it in different colors, and the colors meant something to her. It was amazing. But I was her mother, and it was like she was 30 before I realized that it was that important to her. It was amazing.
Wow, that is really amazing. There you go. You'd think somebody might be doodling in class. So I can't believe we're almost out of time, but it's been a great discussion. I'm going to save this for Roswell, but I'm going to quickly talk about different listening skills. And so I really liked this model, even though I looked at many. And the reason that I liked this one is because to hold judgment and show empathy and have an open mind, because many times they talk about listening skills and it's like, okay, pay attention, watch your body language, don't be multitasking, paraphrase, summarize, ask them, is this what you meant? Asking clarifying questions. But this one really also includes holding judgment. And so the whole time you're self-aware about what that person is teaching you. And of course, we're human. Part of our genetic makeup is we're constantly judging. And we have to, here we go, fight or flight. Is this lion going to kill me? Back to the cavemen, right? We always have to be judging our situation. Am I going to cross the street? I have to look at, to see if the bus is coming first. And so we're constantly judging in a million different ways. But it's really important when we're listening with students and when we're in a coaching conversation or with conversations with students that we're always self-aware about any bias or judgment that we are employing during that conversation. I can't believe how the time went today. That was really, I'm going to save this for Roswell, but I'm going to talk about social media. Here we are. We talked a lot about social media today. They invite us to make snap judgments, right? Do we like or dislike? Is it a thumbs up or thumbs down? And so ways on how to be non-judgmental is to see and listen, but don't evaluate, and try to take in all take a non-judgmental stance by taking in all of the information objectively and listen to just the facts. And so one of the ways, I mean, as we talk more and learn some skills, this will be the second day in Roswell. We talk about like students that come in and kind of like spiral. Has this ever happened to you? Is they go like on and on and on and on telling you about some challenge that they have, and they just spiral and spiral and spiral and kind of repeat themselves about has that ever happened to you before, Hands? And so there are actually coaching skills that you can learn, really simple ones that can help students get out of that spiral. And it's by asking like simple questions like, I really understand and I'm listening to you as you tell me this whole story. And what is the gist of your story? Like, what is really important for me to know now so that I can support you in solving this challenge? And so that can kind of stop them in their tracks and help them really hone down to what they need in this situation. But we'll talk about more of that in Roswell. And I can't believe that it's already 4 o'clock, and I've already said that a couple times. And I really want to honor your time. So we're going to end with this, and I want you to think about this. And when we meet in Roswell, we'll talk about it. This is a minute and a half.
Once upon a time, there was a farmer who lived in a farm with his son and a beautiful horse. One night, strong winds damaged a section of the stable, and the horse broke free and ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors came around and said, "That's too bad, isn't it?" The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next morning, the horse returned, bringing with it 3 other splendid wild horses. The neighbors came around in the evening and exclaimed, "How wonderful, isn't it?" The farmer responded, "Maybe." The following day, his son was attempting to tame one of the wild horses, and while riding it, he was thrown to the ground, breaking his leg. All the neighbors came around and said, "Well, that's too bad, isn't it?" The farmer answered, "Maybe." Later that week, military officials came to the village looking for young men for the army, and they rejected his son because he had a broken leg. All the neighbors came around that evening and said, "Isn't that wonderful?" The farmer said, "Maybe."
And so I just found this, it goes on and on about things that happened. And I just thought, wow, that's really non-judgmental about things that happen, because we don't really know how things are gonna affect others' lives. And so time's almost up, and I'm going to be respectful. I will share the link to it. But I need to let you know that I do have COVID in my household right now. And so far I have been testing negative, but just this afternoon I started feeling a headache and achy and kind of sneezy in a little bit. My throat is feeling a little weird. So I don't know. Thank you, Madeline. I'm feeling a little feverish right now. I've been testing negative so far, but if we get closer to the training and I do test positive, I am not going to risk infecting anybody else. So terrible timing, terrible timing. It's yeah. So I'm just hoping to stay well. I have been taking a bunch of medicine. To try to stay well. This is not letting me move forward in my presentation. Where is it?
I think you need to go back to your presentation, Peggy. It looks like you're in YouTube. And Maricela has raised her hand.
Yes? Maricela? Maricela?
Yes. Hello?
Did you raise your hand?
No, didn't mean to, sorry.
That's okay. So I know you're in the wrong view right now in my slides, but for some reason they didn't let me in presentation mode. But I wanted to, I will save that, to talk about this. So for Roswell, make sure that you are added to the Google Classroom. We will be sending out another, this afternoon, we'll send out another invite and class code. The next thing is to bring a laptop or tablet if you have access to one. Just comfortably. We're going to be moving around a lot. We're not going to be doing a lot of PowerPoint. It's mostly going to be really experiential. Today we were supposed to go into breakout sessions, but I'm sorry that the time just got away from me today. We will be having lunch in the ENMU Roswell cafeteria. So if you do have dietary restrictions, you will hopefully be able to choose something that's within your restrictions. If they're, I don't know, I have celiac, so I always make sure that I take food with me because I never know if I'm going to be able to find something. But you feel free to bring things for your own comfort. Just comfortably bring snacks, bring your coffee cup, whatever it is. The classroom details will be emailed to you, and we will begin at 9 a.m. Tina, do you have anything to add?
I do. I am putting the direct link to the Google Classroom in the chat. And so I have also added everyone that was possible to the classroom. So you should have an invitation in your email. If you have an NM Delta email, please make sure you check that one. That is going to always be the preference for using Google Classroom. And there were just a couple of people who had an email that Google won't let you join our classroom because of it. So like ABQALC, they also have a Google account, and for some reason, if it's in a different domain, Google doesn't allow that. So you may have to create another Google account or use your personal Gmail to join the classroom.
Or NM Delt email?
NM Delt will work, yeah, and I can create an NM Delt email, so you can either go to Propel and find out how to request it, or you can just contact me and we'll get you in there. So yes, and all the classwork and all of the links are there. The other thing I would like to leave you with is we do have a Jamboard, and if you haven't used Jamboard, it's reasonably simple. Let me do it in here. just for you to post. We call it a wow and how. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do.
That's what I was just going to ask you to do, Tina, is post.
Oh, okay. Well, great.
Yeah.
Okay, wait a
Thank
second.
you.
There we go. This one.
So if you can all click on that Jamboard in the meeting, in the chat. And
yeah, did the link show up in the chat?
The link showed up, and I can share the tab.
Great.
And does it say wow and how about?
It does.
So if you you can come over here and get a sticky note and talk about so you can put in a sticky note by on the toolbar on the left and write your reaction, or you can just use text, the text box. Click on that and create a text in those. So, Tina, I'm not being clear in instructions, I don't think.
Peggy, no. I can tell you are not feeling well. I want you to go lay down and get some rest, lots of fluids, and hopefully you will be well by next week. And again, if not, we will reschedule. And Madeline, you had a question that so for you or anyone else who can't make it to Roswell, if you haven't already registered, or if you've registered, please let me know so that we can cancel that. But we will be offering the in-person training again in the spring in the Albuquerque area. So it looks like many of you already understand. So a wow is one or more things that you really got out of, let's say, this session and the last one. You know, what's your big takeaway? And then how about, what questions do you still have? What ideas and what things would you like to know so that we can make sure that we include that in the in-person training in Roswell? So I'm not sure our narwhal is drawing, and that may be a little difficult. of your tools on the side, but you know, drawing is good. Or you could insert an image, so you can see at the side. I don't know, will my laser pointer show up? Just I didn't. Yep. So on the side here, whoops, on the side over there, that's kind of weird. You have a pen, you've got an eraser, you can select objects. The sticky notes are used a lot. I use those a lot because you can add your sticky note and then put it wherever you need it to be. You can add shapes or use the text box. And this Jamboard will continue to be open. So if you need to think about it, you are welcome to revisit the Jamboard. Peggy, any final words before you go lay down?
Thank you. Thank you all. Everyone, please send me good wishes. Oh, there goes my voice. Good wishes for good help.
Oh.
Make a case for coaching. This is Tom. That other stuff is too complicated. Okay. Feel better. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone for attending, and hopefully we will see most of you in Roswell next week. And prayers for Peggy for being well, and her family.
Thank you. Better validate with neutrality.
Feel better soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.